and welcome to Desi in Design.
Whoa.
If you're new here, I'm your host, Sravya. I'm a creative director and illustrator based in London. And on this podcast, I chat with other South Asian creatives about their career journeys, challenges, and triumphs. Today, I'm excited to welcome Murugiah, a British Sri Lankan multidisciplinary artist whose vibrant and surreal creations blend Western pop culture with South Asian motifs. His dynamic work spans art, design, architecture, and film, delving into themes of identity and duality. In this episode, we explore Murugiah's journey from architecture to art, his experiences navigating cultural identity, building a portfolio, working with agents, and embracing his heritage. Let's get into it. Thank you, Murugiah, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So to warm up, I have a rapid fire round.
Cool.
Would you rather work early in the morning or late at night?
Early in the morning.
I love that. Me too.
Yes, very much a morning person.
Amazing. Dream studio location, beachside, in the mountains, or right in the heart of the city?
Oof. Well, I'm going to follow the opinion of Anakin Skywalker and say beach studio is not my preferred choice because I don't like sound that much. It gets everywhere. The mountains would be cool. If I had a strong internet connection, I think the mountains would be great.
Would you hike up there?
Yes, 100%. On a bit of a health kick. So yes, definitely. I think being in the city has helped me a lot, going to events and going to meetings and being able to do that very quickly and impromptu. But a dream studio would definitely be in nature.
I love that. If you could only use one emoji to describe your work, which one would it be?
Maybe the melting down face.
Oh, very creative. I could kind of see that with your art,
yeah.
Actually. If you could instantly master any other art form, which one would it be?
Oh my gosh, that is tough. I'm painting at the moment, but not to the highest standard that I could be. Oh, that's a difficult one.
Yeah.
I'd say painting. I'm painting right now and I want to get better at it. So
okay.
Yes.
I've listened to you on other podcasts and I've heard you answer this question, but I still wanted to ask you because I feel like over time these things change. So what would be your dream client, dream project?
So I was actually asked this question last week at the Royal College of Art where I did a talk with Pictoplasma. And my answer is still the same. My dream client is the one that offers me the most freedom and also is a client in which I can work and learn something new. When I was younger, I used to have a lot of dream clients like Nike or the New Yorker and people like that. And now I'm much more the dream client is someone who is doing a good thing with what they do and someone who offers me a lot of creative freedom. So in 2023, this is a very long answer to your question, I'm sorry, but in 2023, I worked on a campaign for Refugee Week with Counterpoints Arts and Compass Collective, and we ran workshops with young people from refugee backgrounds, and it is a project that I never thought I would be able to do, but something that was the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. This campaign ended up as a window installation for the Royal Festival Hall, and then that window installation got turned into an animation and played either side of the main stage at Glastonbury Festival right before Elton John. So a project in which I didn't know, all of these things on the project developed as we went along, and a client that I had no knowledge of before who were doing wholesome things, helping refugees get into the arts. So the long answer to your question is the client that offers creative freedom and is a client that is doing good in the world.
Yeah, I think the impact makes a difference, right? Because you can see where your art can go.
Yeah, absolutely. And the stories you learn along the way from people that you never would have interacted with prior, that's the dream client.
Yeah, what a wonderful career to have,
Oh, it's so good. It's really nice to kind of be able to adapt the work to different mediums and to different clients and unexpected clients as well. There's definitely some like high fashion clients and like those kind of things that would be fun to work with, but those don't come as often as you'd like. So I'm much more on the train of like, let's just see how things go and, talk to people and see what we can work on together.
Yeah. Jumping into your, I guess, early career, because you said previously you had those dreams of working with the big brands. Were those valid at those times? Because I feel like junior designers do have those goals of, okay, I've kind of made it when I've gotten Adobe or as a client or one of those, because it's portfolio building, right? So do you wish you had gone back and aimed for charities or more impactful clients, or are those still valid?
I think having that dream client list is fun and it's something to work towards. But in terms of going back and finding a path to those kind of clients, I would always say that developing your own personal voice and style and through personal work is the best way to get those clients and to get those opportunities, because you're creating something very unique that is your own, which clients are very drawn to. I think I've gone through lots of phases in my illustration career and art career where I had made things because I thought the client would like them rather than make things that were true to my own voice and my own story. And when I started doing that, making work that was true to my own voice and story, people started to pay attention. So, yes, I don't know if I've answered your question properly, but...
No, you have, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. And going back even further, I kind of want to actually ask about your background and your heritage. Growing up Sri Lankan, how did that influence who you wanted to be?
Well, I grew up in South Wales. I was born near Birmingham, grew up in South Wales, and I was someone who wanted to fit in to my predominantly white friends at school. We had a kind of like quite a diverse group at school, but the group that I ended up hanging out with were a bunch of like white Welsh lads, basically. And so I would be fitting in with them through movies and music that we liked, right? But then I'd be going home and my parents would be making Sri Lankan food, and we'd have friends over, and we'd go to like temples and stuff. So I was someone of two different worlds, and it's something I now make my work about, basically. So yeah, someone who never really fitted into either, because I was also trying to find my own kind of avenue. So yeah, that's what childhood was like.
Did you always appreciate it as a kid? Because I was similar, and I very much tried to reject that side because I didn't feel like it was accepted. Or it was almost like, even in the South Indian world, I didn't feel like I was brown enough to fit in with them. Like my Telugu wasn't good. I couldn't speak Hindi.
Right.
And so it was like I couldn't fit into either.
Yeah, I'm the same. I couldn't fit
Really,
into either.
yeah.
And I did reject it because my parents, I can understand every word of Tamil, but I can't speak it.
Yeah.
Which means my parents would speak to me in Tamil and I would say, "What did you say?" And then they would explain it to me in English. And then they would be like, "Can you now repeat that in Tamil?" And I'd be like, "No." So yeah, I very much was rejecting it, and no regrets, but obviously I should have embraced it at a much younger age, because now I'm obsessed with learning more about my culture. So it's like, yeah. But I mean, you're situated in a predominantly kind of like Western world. You are going to try and assimilate in some form. I don't know, it makes for much more interesting work now, trying to figure that stuff out and kind of look back and see why and how. So yeah, big rejection of my culture.
Yeah. I think that's a very similar journey of like a lot of diaspora, right?
Yeah.
And I think only recently there's been more acceptance in society as well for people who are different. Yeah,
and you're faced with a lot of prejudice as well if you are too one way or the other, right? So when I was a kid, it was quite daunting to, I don't know, be more South Asian at school. So yeah, that's probably another reason that I was more of rejecting it as well. Yeah. But my childhood was spent watching X-Men cartoons from the 90s, playing with Tamagotchis and Pokemon cards, and playing video games like Nintendo games. So very colourful childhood, basically, in terms of the things I was consuming. And then I got into the teen years of American pop punk.
Oh, love that, yeah.
That was what I was obsessed with and still am to this day.
And with your family, did you watch like Sri Lankan film? And
I could not stand the Tamil movies that my parents watched because they were so low budget.
Really?
Even at that age, I was like, production value is not good here.
Yeah.
Like, they're using tomato ketchup for blood in these movies, and like, I was so not interested in them. But now I'm watching, I was obsessed with RRR from a few years ago, and I'm starting to get more into South Asian movies and kind of like and seeing what they're like now, and kind of, I'm still very judgmental on production values, but I'm being a bit more selective of what movies I consume now.
Even the production value and like the funding going into South Asian films internationally is like a lot more. So they can do a lot more now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they go absolutely crazy now.
Yeah. It's nice to see because you can kind of relate and like champion them as well.
Yeah, definitely. There's a new movie called All We Imagine Is Light that is coming out that could have been France's or India's selection for the Oscars for Best International Feature, and neither of them picked it. But I think it might be an amazing film, so keep an eye out for that one.
Interesting, yeah. So was creativity always supported by your family and your community?
Yes and no. I think it's quite a similar story. It was treated like a hobby. I guess it's nice that it was never restricted. It was very much like, let him do his thing of drawing. But it was always treated like a hobby. My parents would often say like, oh, but you're going to get a real job, right? You're going to go in to do a different subject and do something actually proper with your life. And in my head, I was like, probably not, But supportive in another way of like, I remember my school had this school fashion show every year.
Okay.
And at the end of the fashion show, they would also do these things like auction off pieces of artwork that the students had made. And one of my pieces was auctioned off, and my mum was in the audience, and she was the person who bid on it, So supportive, very much so, I think, in some ways. But when it got to actually picking a career, I think my parents' mindset was one of, they're immigrant parents coming to this country. All they know is look after your kids and protect your kids. And my dad was a doctor. My brother's a doctor. Like, it's a sensible job to have, right? And so they were always advising me to do the same thing because that's all they knew. They didn't really have time to go to galleries and to be more cultured in the world. They were more focused on education and kind of like learning and protecting their kids in that way. So yes and no to answer your question.
But they allowed you to take GCSE art and stuff?
Oh, yeah. So I was never restricted in what I could do. I was like, parents, can I be an artist at the age of like 18? I was like, I want to be an artist. And they were like, no, you should do something that is art linked, but has a bit of physics and maths and like, maybe something that has a 9-to-5 job, 9 to 5 hours that you could go to work and kind of, they were trying to protect me because being a freelance artist is tough. At the time, the education around what you could do with an art career, it was either you be an artist or you be an architect. There wasn't really understanding of graphic design, of illustration. So we ended up picking architecture.
I love how you say we.
Yeah, it really was a we. It was like I was like, okay, I'll do architecture, but it was encouraged. Yeah. But I had the best time at architecture school. So.
And how long was the course?
7 years.
Wow. To be a doctor.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I loved it because I got to be a student for 7 years. Yeah. Like I didn't, it was great. But I did a 3-year undergraduate degree at Kingston University. I did a year out in industry during the financial crisis of 2008. Did a year out in industry, ended up working for 3 or 4 different architecture firms, interior design firms. And then I did 2 years of a diploma. Mm-hmm. And then I did another year out in industry, which only lasted 6 months because all of my hair fell out from stress.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's not a good idea to do 7-year architecture course and then go straight into work, which is what you're meant to do, but it's so stressful. I had a great time during my undergrad, but post-grad it starts to get a bit more serious and, you're entering a world of architecture work. And all of my hair fell out from stress.
What was the part that was like really stressful? Is it the hours or is it like you just work for 10 years before you see any like pay rise?
I mean, your final year of architecture school, you're having to present every week or every 2 weeks, and you're having to make a wall full of work, and you're having to spend lots of money printing that work out and presenting it in these beautiful books. They really put you through the ringer in terms of like presenting a lot of work every 2 weeks. And then you have to get up in front of 20 or 30 people and present that work. And then your teacher would literally tear it all down. They would be like, this is terrible, or like, you're not working it. And later on, as you get further in your education, they're a bit more like, maybe you could think about this, or they're a bit more lenient. But by the end of the 7 years, my final year tutor, this like incredibly talented architectural photographer. He was like, you're amazing at presenting the work. You're amazing at navigating us through this building that you've designed. But your understanding or interest, let's say, in the construction side of architecture and how the aesthetics and the construction merge together, that's not something that you're that interested in. And I don't really see a future for you in the world of architecture. He then got me a job in architecture, which was amazing. But that only lasted 6 months because the shock of going from designing an entire building in school, my final year project was an art gallery in Berlin for Gerhard Richter's abstract work. So I designed this giant gallery. To go from that to getting a job at an architecture firm where you're doing toilet details at a restaurant. It's kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to be here for a long time before I can progress. And it was never something that I wanted to do to begin with, you know, because of my folks. And yeah, my body was telling me like, my hair was falling out. My body was telling me like, don't do this, basically. Yeah. So I still called my parents afterwards and was like, hey, I'm thinking of leaving. And they, to their credit, they were like, if your body's telling you to go, you should go, do something else. And then I moved on to the world of art.
So how did you know where to go from there?
I really didn't.
Yeah.
I had saved enough money in that job to fund me for like another 6 months or a year. And I started making personal work. It wasn't really personal. It was just about things that I loved. So I started making work about movies, basically. I did these mock movie posters. I did a project where I reinterpreted Quentin Tarantino's screenplays as Penguin book covers, which was fun.
So passion projects. That you set
passion
yourself
projects.
Briefs.
Yeah, exactly. And they were all over the place stylistically. They were like graphical shapes or they were like pointillism illustration. So I did that for the first year and a half. And then I realized like, oh, you need some professional work experience. And I went to the 2 organizations that could take someone with my very little experience in illustration. The world of greeting cards, Scribbler cards. They gave me a job. It lasted a year and I was an illustrator on greeting cards, packaging, wrapping paper.
That's amazing.
Which is amazing. Yeah, it's really good. And I got a good education in terms of like what you can and cannot do with illustration for that market. And I was able to like produce work very quickly and learn how to do that very quickly in a professional context. And after that year, I worked for Leon Restaurants as a graphic designer, and I was learning much more about layout design, packaging design, how you prepare layouts for menus, things like that.
Very print focused.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So 2 good years of like solid work experience in those industries. And throughout that time, I was continuing my freelance work. I was continuing developing an illustration style.
And how did you get these freelance gigs? Because this is before the time of social media, right?
Before the time of social media, or around the beginning of Instagram, 2012. But I was quite lucky. Some of those passion projects ended up on blogs and websites. Okay. There was a magazine called Shortlist Magazine that used to be like a print magazine that used to run weekly and people could pick it up at various train stations and stuff. But they published a lot of my film passion projects, which was really cool. So that got me more attention and it got me more opportunities to work with freelance clients.
Yeah, I think that's quite important because sometimes I think creatives focus so much on just social, but before social, people still got freelance gigs. Because I get that question a lot, like, do I need to have an audience on social media for people to take me seriously? I'm like, no, you can put your portfolio in like physical books.
Yes.
In blogs or articles.
On your own website, developing your own kind of work and then pitching it out to various clients through. Back then, I was going to news agents and looking at magazines, and then in the column section, the opening column, it would be the editor's name and the art director's name, and then I'd find their email address. I'd just work it out. It's quite easy. Sometimes the email address is even was in there, so I would just contact them. And I do stupid shit like messaging the head of a company with only 3 examples of passion projects, being like, I want to design your next brand campaign. And it's like, clearly you're not ready for this. But
did they get back to you?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I can still find some of them. I've deleted them since, but I've still found some of my emails from that many years ago. And I had a terrible logo and, but it allowed me to develop the confidence to continue to do that.
I think it takes a lot of confidence, a lot of rejection, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and not get like sad after the first rejection.
Yes, I still get sad after rejections, but I'm a bit slightly more thick-skinned now.
So how did you go from designing for so many different clients to, I know you've talked about this, finding your own style, but I want to specifically ask, what were the projects that you set for yourself to actually get there, like the action bits?
I think it's been a case of constant analysis of my own work and realizing it wasn't authentic or true enough to me. And the years where I started in 2012 after my architectural education and 2019, I was really struggling. I was making work, I was doing projects in different illustration styles. I even got as far as doing a seek and find book in a Where's Wally style. It got published. I got paid a lot of money to make this book, but at the end of it, I was still like, this isn't me. This isn't what I want to do. So it was a constant reevaluation of whether this work was making me happy. And that all ended in 2019, where I got so down about my work. I was like, right, COVID has just happened. I'm going to use this time to refresh something completely new. And I spoke to a friend, Dolly, illustrator Dolly, who I think is going to be on a future episode of this podcast. Hello from the past, Dolly. I spoke to him. I speak to him every week. He's an amazing guy and my mentor in a way. And I asked him, like, look, I'm looking to change everything. What should I do? And he was like, well, you're really good at busy compositions. You love putting loads of stuff on a page and you're good at it. And he was like, you're also really good at color. You can just use lots of different colors and make it make sense. And I was like, so many people can do that already. What else can I do that's more unique? And he was like, look at you. You are someone of two different worlds, someone who grew up in the West with heritage from the East. Like, use it, use that juxtaposition or use that merging of these two worlds as a way to develop personal work and use the bright colors and the busy compositions as well. So what he was actually saying was have a thematic influence in your work, which is duality, identity, cultural heritage, and then merge it with visual aesthetics of bright colors, busy compositions, your love of pop culture, your love of movies, surreal psychedelia stuff, which I had picked up along the way, these influences, and start to make work with that in mind, basically. So during COVID, I spent 2 years of COVID lockdown making a new piece of work every single week, loosely inspired by a rough idea I was having. So my first piece in this new style was I wanted to make something that was inspired by the Silver Surfer and Galactus from Silver Surfer comics, from Marvel Comics. But instead of trying to recreate those characters, Galactus is often depicted as a giant head in space, and the Surfer is depicted tiny in front of him. So I was like, right, could I merge this world into my own creative thinking and influences? So I was like, what else takes the form of a giant face in my culture? And it's like Sri Lankan Raksha masks. How can I depict this surfer character with influences that I've recently picked up? So Jodorowsky's The Holy Mountain, where the central character wears this kind of tall hat and wears a cloak. So I started to kind of create work like that. And if you look at this piece, Herald, that I made at that time, it is this giant Sri Lankan Raksha mask, but modernized in a way and kind of like infused with the way I make work, you know, in a Western world. And there's this tiny surfer character in front, and I started to make more work that was like that. They're very loose ideas, but it was just a way for me to develop a new piece of work every week. And then 2 years of that, I ended up with a giant portfolio of consistent work, and then people started to pay attention and hire me for editorial jobs at first, and then movie posters, and, you know, it continued from there.
You've been able to pull from all of those previous jobs and those experiences, and also where you were in your life, right? And also it seems like you have a good creative friend who can like audit you, basically.
Still does to this day.
That's amazing though, to have that peer support.
Yeah, I'm someone who is always looking, never felt comfortable in one place or the other. So I'm constantly searching for role models, figures in my life that I can, you know, get help from and stuff. So I take naturally to like asking for advice.
What would be, I guess, looking back, the most challenging work? Because I feel like people always ask, what's the one that you love the most? But I'm quite curious, like, what really pushed you and like made you question your entire life? Because you always have one of those clients, right? And I feel like when you look back, you're like, okay, I learned a lot.
I think the work that I was doing before discovering this new style was always incredibly challenging because it was work that was requiring me to like editorials that were like depict this particular moment in politics or or do this map or this airline editorial about this particular topic. It was something I just wasn't interested in doing. So it was very challenging to try and fit my creative thinking to that. Whereas now I developed this stuff during COVID and now clients come to me for that. So I'm much more of a driving factor in how the project goes and how the project is determined. So nowadays it's not that difficult.
Yeah, now it's authentic, I guess.
It's much more authentic, and now I think the difficult thing is challenging myself to develop the work even further and depicting it in different mediums and working with clients who are more understanding of like, okay, I'm more interested in painting now. Can I make this a painted job? And can we work together on the issues surrounding that? It's more like building relationships with clients in that way than it is being able to do the work.
And once you found your style, your new style, how did you start to get clients? Like, was it very much you reaching out and being like, here's my new portfolio?
When I put that initial set of work up that I developed during COVID up on my Instagram, I slowly started to get contacted by editorial clients at first, Mondo, the movie posters, and Mondo has a big audience. So nowadays clients will be like, oh, I saw those Mondo posters you did. Like, that's amazing. What are you working on now? And it developed through that. Every time I put a client job up on my Instagram, or I would use those projects to send to new clients and contact them. I still have that tenacity to contact new clients and be like, hey, what are you working on right now? I've got this portfolio. What do you think? Most of those projects I got that way. During the end of COVID, I did get a new agent. I had 3 agents before that.
And the previous agents, did they find you or did you?
I contacted them. I wanted to be a part of their agency. But the thing is, I should have been a bit more honest with them all at the time because I was making work that I wasn't really happy with. So at the end of like a 2-year stretch, I'd be like, guys, I'm looking to make my work in this way. Is that okay? And they'd be like, we know we just built a portfolio together of this work. And I'd be like, okay, in that case, goodbye. I'll see you later.
Got it. Okay.
So I felt bad, but it was kind of like, I didn't really know who I was. And I'm still like that to this day. So much so that I recently left an agent because I wanted to go down a more fine art route with the work. And now I have an agent who doesn't have a website, does everything via WhatsApp and email, but like we correspond through WhatsApp, and she sends my work out to clients, but it's much more of a personal approach. So this agent is someone who contacts clients directly and emails with them. And I guess the big difference with an agent like that versus your traditional art illustration agent is I'm not sitting next to a load of other artists and we're not being shown together. I'm being represented much more individually.
Wow.
Like, I represent this artist. This is what they do. What would you like to work on with them? It feels much more like the type of place I want to be in terms of being represented as an artist rather than a commercial illustrator. I still do commercial work, but I've always been more leaning towards art over commercial illustration. So the kind of work I'm looking for now is more artist collaborative pieces and working collaboratively with brands and organizations.
What's the, I guess, biggest perk of having an agent?
The biggest perk of having an agent is someone who you can correspond with and talk about your development. You know, being an artist, a self-employed freelance artist, is very lonely. And bless my partner, who's a scientist, I talk to her all the time. I'm like, so I'm thinking of going in this direction. What do you think? And she's like, I literally, the work is great. I just have no idea, like what, you know. So working with an agent who has a lot of experience in the type of work I want to get and move into, they're able to kind of converse with me in a way that is much more helpful to the development of my career. So that's the benefit.
Got it. For someone who's listening who would like an agent or is curious about how it works, how do you end up, I guess, finding them, working with them? Because traditionally, the way I've learned it is like they will find you. Like you have to be found and you have to be like scouted, not the other way around.
I've always contacted them and said, I have a portfolio. Would you like to represent me? I've gone to events. I've gone to speed dating style events where you're like, you jump from agent to agent and you're showing them a portfolio of work. I've been doing that throughout my career. I don't do it now, but in the early days, I was doing that constantly. But the biggest advice for someone who's looking for an agent, I think, is to develop your own personal voice and your work and have it be consistent. The big thing that commercial illustration agents want is the ability to sell you as a consistent artist. So the most successful commercial illustrators are the ones who have the most consistent work and are able to consistently make that work for various clients, and then send it to as many agents as possible. Go to as many events where agents are there and they're able to kind of look at your work in person. Sell yourself as a person, as an individual who is confident about the work they make. But I can't stress it enough. Develop your own personal voice and be confident and comfortable with it before you then send it to anyone else.
Speaking about your personal style, you draw from your heritage. How has that been received?
I think at the moment it is my personal work, the fine artwork that I exhibit is probably the most pure representation of what I'm trying to explore. And when I work with commercial clients and brands, it's almost like an offshoot of that. I can draw from my heritage and make and put little motifs and develop characters that look cool that the client doesn't know are inspired by my heritage, or maybe they do, but they don't mind. It's not something that is discussed. It's very much like that character looks cool. Can we put him in this collaboration with New Balance, for example? Like the character that I had in that New Balance collaboration was my little avatar, but they never asked any questions about it. They just thought it looked cool. But the work I'm developing, it's very much this merging of being brought up and having cultural influences from the West and the East. So it's really that merging that I'm interested in. It's not being representative too much of one side or the other. It's the South Asian kid who likes American pop punk, That's a real merging of my culture and my interests. So that's what I'm trying to represent in the art. And what scenarios does that have? In terms of the brands and the clients, I think that will just get stronger. I think the more awareness that clients and brands and people in the world have of second generation immigrants and what they go through and what their experiences are, they're more likely to kind of like look for that work in their organizations.
Have you had the opportunity to work with any South Asian curators, artists?
Yes, I've worked with a curator called the Noble Sage. We exhibited a piece of mine called Stitch, which was very cool. I've also designed a movie poster for Polite Society, Nida Manzoor's film from a few years ago. It was very cool. And I got the opportunity to design that film poster. And it was like the main character's fist covered in kind of South Asian jewelry, punching through a mandala. And there were little motifs around the rest of her story in the film. It was so much fun.
Yeah, I think that industry is growing as well, like South Asians collaborating and, championing each other.
Absolutely. I mean, I did work on a giant public art sculpture for Diwali with the Now Gallery, which was very much the Now Gallery's passion and interest in wanting to celebrate Diwali and kind of bringing that community together in the local area of the Greenwich Peninsula. And that was amazing. And that project got taken to Liverpool's River of Light Festival to do the same. So that's a lot of fun.
So sick. And are there South Asian artists that you're currently inspired by?
Oh, wow. There's loads. I'm like obviously obsessed with the world of film and pop culture. So I'm kind of really into what Nish Kumar, Ramesh Ranganathan, Nida Manzoor, and kind of the work that she's doing. Like, yeah, I'm obsessed. It's so much fun to see so many people in the world of pop culture, film, comedy, like growing audiences. It's such an inspiring thing to be around. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited for younger South Asian creatives because they get to see all this representation and like feel braver about that identity, because I very much also pushed it down. And I'm like, okay, it's okay. It's cool to be brown now.
Yeah, it's cool to be brown. It's also cool to be very honest and open about the issues that come with growing up as a brown kid.
Yeah.
And like, it's amazing to see all of these creatives displaying the heritage and what it was like to grow up in that world.
Yeah. Before we end, I wanted to ask you if you had any projects that you're currently working on that you're excited about and can share with us.
So I can describe the projects, but I probably can't be too specific about the details. I'm working on my first book publishing project. So the last book publishing project I did was that Where's the Dude book, which nearly killed my, passion for art making. Whereas this is another book publishing project which is directly linked to the work I've been doing. It's a very important book that I'm working on. So that's really cool, and that comes out next year. I'm also developing a solo exhibition with an organization, a very big organization in the UK, and that's quite exciting as well. And if it goes through, it's going to be my first solo show, so that's going to be quite exciting. I'm constantly making more movie poster prints. I'm doing one for Poor Things at the moment. I'm going to do one for The Shining.
Oh.
Yes, yeah. Continue that Kubrick series from 2020 of Clockwork Orange and 2001 into The Shining. The client's going to hate me because I'm going to want to paint it, instead of making it digitally. So, yeah, lots of things coming up that I'm excited about.
I love that you are interested in painting and you're pushing your clients to consider that.
Yeah, I think it's quite important to continue to have personal development and continue to kind of like explore what you've been doing. As I mentioned before, I'm someone who's never fully comfortable in one place. So if I've done 10 movie poster prints digitally, I'm going to want to make the next few painted, or I'm going to want to make the next few lino cut prints, or just constantly developing and learning new skills and seeing how I can apply them to my creative work. The solo show is really going to be about me understanding what I've been doing the last 5 years and kind of trying to make sense of it all, and then almost putting a chapter ending in that period, and then it allowing me to kind of move forward and develop something entirely new. So yeah, that'll be exciting.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Last question. What's the best piece of advice you could give to a young creative looking to become an artist?
So the best advice I can give to a young creative looking to become an artist, it's something that I am very passionate about and have been for many years, and it's tapping into a unique voice and a unique experience. Everybody's had a unique experience. Every single person is unique. Whatever their experience is, there's something that you can tap into, and there's something that you can merge it with that you're currently thinking about. If I wasn't tapping into my world of Sri Lankan heritage, I'd be tapping into my love of movies. And the characters that I would design would have like film canisters for heads, and it would just be something else that I would be interested in working with, developing. So find that unique voice and merge it with some of the things that you love and start making work, basically. Sometimes I worry I come across too serious, like I'm an Asian dad giving advice, but the truth is, I feel very comfortable in doing it, in developing the work I'm developing, because it's something that I'm doing very naturally. I'm not kind of putting all the work up and being like, right, it needs to be this, this, and this. I'm like, oh, what do I feel like making for the show poster, for example, for my show, or the main piece that's going to be there? And the main idea I'm having is me hung over a desk looking a bit depressed, but flowers growing from me. And then another version of me with their hand on my shoulder, tapping me, being like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And it's just something that I'm currently feeling rather than that I'm planning ahead of time. So yeah, I think have a lot of fun in trying to come up with these ideas that are inspired by your passions, your interests, your experiences. Because when you have fun making this work, that's what ends up being the kind of strongest work, I think.
Yeah. Very intuitive, very like in the present.
Yeah. It's always been how I've worked, very intuitively, how I've made decisions and how I think everybody should be working.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for your time and sharing.
Thank you for having me. It's been great. It's been great.
I'm so excited for this to come out.
Yeah, me too. And I'm really looking forward to the rest of the guests you're going to have on the podcast. And yeah, can't wait.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Be sure to follow Murugiah on Instagram @_Murugiah to stay up to date with his latest work. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who would appreciate it. Stay connected for updates on new episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and creative industry insights by following us on social media or joining our newsletter at desianddesign.com. That's all for today. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.